In. Okay, guys. So for today's live stream, I'm not as prepared as I like to be normally, but I thought we just needed a moment to just touch base with reality, right? I think sometimes after these like long, crazed Trumpian weekends, where there's too much exposure to the. Oh, hang on one second. I just have to turn. My son's watching TV outside. I just got to ask him to turn it down. Please hang on, everyone. Don't go away. Can you make that a little lower, buddy? Thank you. Okay, guys, my apologies. Anyway, while I'm kind of getting ready here, let me just pull up the live streams. Let's see, so I can see the chats. Okay, it'll just take a moment. And YouTube is up, and we'll get Twitch rolling here. Okay, and we have Twitch. So anyway, guys, it was a weird weekend, right? It wasn't an unexpected turn of events, right? White nationalists marching in the nation's capital during the July 4th celebration. 300 of them. That's not unexpected, right? Unfortunately. Terrible weather. Multiple people having to seek medical attention because of excessive repressive heat. MAGA folks earlier in the day complaining about how awful the situation was, the watering stations, the cooling areas, and everything else. The weather exploding because, they were only warned about that a million times. So the weather exploding and all of the folks attending the fair or the whatever it was, the celebrations, having to be evacuated. The almost comical irony of a lot of the MAGA folks who had to be evacuated when the storm hit, going in the Smithsonian, African American Museum. That's, poetic justice, I guess, to a certain extent. Hey, Aggie. Hey, Patty Ann. How are you guys? I'm just kind of recapping. I don't have a formal live prepped today. I don't have a lot to. I don't have a lot. I mean, I have a couple of things that I've teed up for us to share for entertainment value, predominantly, but I don't have a big news story to cover. I think sometimes after a crazy weekend like we had, I think sometimes sometimes you just need to come together and talk about the lunacy a little bit and just kind of level set and figure out where you are, right? And I was just kind of going over the different things that happened on July 4th specifically that were indicative of this insane moment we're in. So I had covered the white nationalists marching, and none of these things, which under normal circumstances on July 4th, you wouldn't really think about it, right? You wouldn't think about on July 4th, you wouldn't care what's going on in Washington, D.C. normally on July 4th, unless, you happen to go to Washington, D.C. on July 4th, right? And for when any other person was president, with the exception of this fucking idiot, I would have loved to have gone to Washington, D.C. on July 4th, but I wouldn't have cared, right? I wouldn't have thought about it. It's not even really new. It would be a passing fluff story on local news that July 4th celebrations in the nation's capital were really nice, or the excessive heat. really tamped down on July 4th celebrations in the nation's capital. Granted, it's the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States of America. That might have made things differently if, we didn't have such a profane creep in the White House, but maybe not. Maybe not. But because it's Trump, because it's the idiot, and because everything is such a spectacle, because the daily presidency, the day-to-day presidency is such a dark, comical spectacle, everybody's eyes were dialed into July 4th. And nobody was dialed into July 4th for the celebration. Nobody. No, I don't really care what they say. I don't care what Fox News says, or the Trump cult members on X, or his sycophants surrounding him. It doesn't really matter what anyone says. There were two really, just for those who are paying attention, and I know a lot of people just need to check out and they're not paying attention, and I get it. But for those who are paying attention, it was really, there were two ways that everybody looked at and reported on July 4th. It was either you were on offense or defense. Like there was nothing in between. Fox News, right-wing podcasters, right-wing influencers on social media, the White House, and MAGA people in my Facebook feed were focused on defense. That was it. They were fully prepared because they live to own the libs. There is no other policy position except being a racist and owning the libs. There is no other policy position within that community other than those things. And therefore, the stupidity of what we all knew was going to take place on July 4th, the only way you could approach it is, as a pro-democracy person, you would approach it as on offense. You would be ready to make fun of it or to call out the inevitable ridiculousness. If you were the village idiot Donald Trump or the goofballs surrounding him, you would be in the opposite position, right? You would be fully prepared to defend the absurdity and to find ways to call it normal. And the things that just were so abnormally indefensible, you would just be fully prepared to lie and tell people that what they saw wasn't what they saw. And that's an example of that would be the white supremacists. There were about 300 white supremacists in their khakis and their polos and their flags and their masks, right? There were about 300 of them marching for Donald Trump, with Donald Trump, about Donald Trump. I mean, that doesn't mean they wouldn't have shown up anyway, but this was an especially auspicious opportunity for them to do what it is that they do. And that was something that the folks on Fox News and the Trump sycophants on X really could not effectively find a way to refute, right? You can't really normalize that, right? You know what I mean? Like you can't, like it could normalize the weather, right? I mean, it's like, oh, this isn't the president's fault, but he's so great, even though we just fucking threw everybody off the National Mall because basically we have tornado-like, hurricane and tornado-like situation outside that everybody knew was coming. They can spin that, and they can spin that making the argument this is to prove that the president is so strong and so powerful. He's going to face up. Jesus is here. And he's going to tone down Mother Nature. We're going to get her in line. We're going to get Mother Nature's a horrible person. She's horrible. I'm going to tell you something, right? Mother Nature, she's a very low IQ person. I can tell you that right now. I know I'm very smart and I know a lot about nature.
And Mother Nature is very low IQ. She's got a very low. She's not a very smart, and she's not very nice to me. She's very low IQ, and she's not very nice to me. Mother Nature. So, but so he was, Superman and Jesus, right? He stood up to the elements, and he still deserved to be worshipped. And so they can spin the weather and make it crazy normal, sort of. But they can't spin 300 white nationalists, right? The new KKK uniform, which is khakis and polo shirts. They can't spin that very well. So what did they do? Laura Ingraham posted on X. I'm sure you're familiar with Laura Ingraham. She's a Fox News host. She's one of the chief propagandists in Fox News for the village idiot Donald Trump. She posted she didn't believe it. Did you guys see this yet? She doesn't believe it. I don't know if I have it. I don't know if I kept it. Let me just, before I flip you guys over, let me see if I pulled a, you know what? I think I have it in my Substack. Let me just see if I can pull it up for you guys. All right. Right. Give me a second here. Oh, come on. It's got to be around here. Here it is. Here it is, if I can pull it up. Oh, that's not it. All right. I'm not going to waste your time. But Laura Ingraham said in her post that she doesn't believe it. It's Antifa. Antifa was dressed up. Antifa dressed up as white supremacists to make Trump look bad, to make it look like the white supremacists were in the house on July 4th. And all those pictures, you probably saw them if you noticed them on social media, like of the metro, where there was like a couple of different shots of a black person sitting on the metro being intimidated, one person being intimidated and in essence threatened by 10 of these goofballs in their khakis and their polo shirts, right? All of those were Antifa, faking it to make Trump look bad. And that's the narrative they're going with. It's propagating on X now. And although I haven't watched Fox News' reporting, I can't imagine that they're not going to push that narrative that Antifa was the white national. It wasn't really white nationalists. It was Antifa. So for that, which they cannot normalize because it's too obscene and it's too crazy, they go up and they can go now and they can make up the most unthinkably childish, crazy, mildly entertaining lie about it and just push it as the truth. And the community buys it. So I mean, that's where we are, right? I mean, that's the moment that we're in right now. It's a desperate cry for help, I think, from the Trump sycophantic folks. I think they know it's over. Electorally, they know it's over. I think they know that it's just a matter of time until it becomes unsustainable. This president, they know. I think even Laura Ingraham knows that this is an unsustainable presidency. I've reached a point now where I don't know how this goes on for 4 more years, and how they'll defend anything, but how much will continue to be defensible in any capacity when, I think there were ample interviews with people over the weekend, not just on and leading up to July 4th, with people who were MAGA folks who were really angry, really incensed about how utterly dysfunctional things were, how dangerous things were, how incredibly uncomfortable they were. So I think even within that community, it's the fractures, even within the absolute craziest of the crazy, the cult portion of the community. I think even within that space, we are starting to see massive fractures. And I think even Laura Ingraham and her cast of characters, I think it's a, and the folks that I watch on X, I think it's an act of desperation now. It started with the reflecting pool and propagating the nonsense that somebody came and cut the reflecting pool for 350 feet of the reflecting pool with like a knife or a box cutter or some shit. The fake arrests, I mean, they were real arrests, but they're not going to go anywhere. The pretend arrests for the supposed people who did it, the video footage that Fox News and I think it was the Interior Department put out of the alleged perpetrator who looked like a young girl, you know, petite young lady, right? Who happened to be leaning, happened to be leaning into the pool. Maybe she got her hands wet or something, right? The hiker or the not the hiker, the former Olympic kayaker who was arrested on the most serious charges because the claim is that he was, I don't know, remember if he was running or riding his bike or doing something, and he wanted to check out the reflecting pool. So he stopped by, he took a look, he saw the the stuff. I'm sorry, I got a tickle in my throat. He saw that stuff, the blue liner or whatever. Whether he touched it or he didn't touch it, they arrested him, and he's like, "I didn't fucking touch it. What's wrong with these idiots? It's going to go nowhere." Uh, you know, Janine Box of Wine Piero, if she's sober enough, is going to prosecute this case and just make an ass out of herself again, right? But all of that, all of it, it's like it's just a desperate. It's almost a cry for help because it's over. MAGA's over. I have been arguing for months now that as soon as the Epstein cover up exploded, and as soon as the economy, the real economy, not even just the month to month devastating economic reports that occasionally have a sort of okay report built in, but then you have revisions on those good reports a month later and they're horrible. But those Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that we not even just taking them out of the equation, just people going to the grocery store, right? As soon as that started, there was a point, I don't remember when it was, but I just felt from watching it from the macro view that the politics of Trump were over. And I worried about the authoritarian coup, which is wasn't worried about the politics anymore. And I felt like once we hit 20% approval rating across the board all the time, we don't have to worry about the authoritarian coup anymore. I think we're pretty close to that. The politics have been done for a while. I don't understand. I hear it over and over again, and I find all of this fretting over the midterms ridiculous. Even within my own community, it's ridiculous. We should be hyper-focused on winning the midterms, not trying and winning as big as we can, not what if we lose the midterms. It's so stupid at this point. The metrics of every fucking election are indicative of victory for pro-democracy candidates. It's almost certain you're going to see a few. It's all but guaranteed you're going to see a few surprises in deep red districts where Democrats are going to win. You're going to have probably, if you get a handful, if you get just three major surprises in the Senate. If Democrats hold every seat we expect them to hold, and they win like three surprises in red states. I'm not talking about red states that
would have been close but aren't anymore, like John Ossoff's race in Georgia, right? I'm not even talking about how Tallarico is going to wipe the floor with Ken Paxton in Texas. I'm talking about Iowa. I'm talking about Montana. I'm talking about Ohio. I'm talking about Kansas. I'm talking about deep red places. I'm talking about Mitch McConnell's seat, right? I'm talking about Lindsey Graham's seat in South Carolina. I'm talking about deep red, places that it would be unthinkable. If you just get 3 of those, you're heading toward, you're not there, but you're heading toward a supermajority of Democrats in the Senate. And I look, I don't want to use this live today to hammer on Democrats and even hammer on some of my fellow creators, but I'm not worried about whether or not Democrats are going to take the House and the Senate. My only thing that I think about is how big is that victory going to be? And I think Laura Ingraham, get back to what we're talking about in today's live. I think Laura Ingraham knows it. And I think across the board, Republicans know it. And these ridiculous behaviors they're engaging in right now are just a desperate cry for help. They're just throwing Hail Marys all over the place, trying to desperately. It's like when we knew Biden had no shot, right? You know what I mean? When after that at the election, right? Here's the difference between them and us. There are many, but here's one, I think, keen difference. When we knew that Biden was going to lose, I don't even know why I have this on. I don't need it. When we knew that Biden was going to, after that just disastrous debate with Trump, right? We knew Biden was going. We all knew Biden couldn't beat Trump. And there was a handful of us, of Democrats. I had a dear friend who was one of them, who just was living in delusion land, right? That Biden could still win. He was living in the place that Republicans are living in right now about Trump, right? In Delusionville. And he kept arguing with me. I need to stand behind the president. The president has done just such a good job. And I was like, he's not fucking going to win. And Trump is going to win. That's it, period. But most of us recognize that. And we either backed Kamala Harris because that's what the party wanted, or we backed people like James Carville, not for president, but who were arguing that we can't just have it be Kamala. There should be an actual, at the Constitution, at the Democratic National Convention, there should be an actual mini runoff sort of election. Let everybody use the DNC, the Democratic National Conference, whatever it was. Use it to turn it into an opportunity for everybody to present their case and do some polling and make a fucking decision, right? That was the other line of thought. And at the convention, right? That was the line of thought. And we were all there, but we all stopped. 99% of us, I don't know, I'm making up. It was 99%. I can tell you that right now. I mean, I'm just making up numbers, but it felt like the vast majority of us were like, Biden's done. Just forget about it. Like, we didn't live in this state of delusion because we didn't engage in a loyalty pledge. Our careers didn't rely on it. Laura Ingraham, in a lot of ways, I guess she would survive because she's so, I'm talking about like in terms of professionally, she's so beloved I would think, by her community, by her viewers and so trusted. I imagine that if they suddenly realized that she was wrong about everything for all of these years, in terms of Trump, they'd still stay with her because they've been with her so long. So I don't know. I don't know what, but I don't, maybe it's ego, maybe it's professionalism. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's her profession, but for whatever it is, they cling. These Republicans, I don't even want to call them Republicans. These Trumpians in the media and on social media, certainly on social media, like the Benny, whatever the fuck his name is, and a lot of these weirdos that I follow on X, they're tied to Donald Trump. If Donald Trump disappears, I suppose some of them could pivot. Yeah, I mean, Tucker Carlson's doing it now, right? But I suppose some of them could pivot and survive. But I think many of them professionally are tied to Donald Trump. So when they just spout out fucking crazy, just absurd, crazy things like Antifa was actually, the white supremacists were actually Antifa in disguise. You know, it's desperation. You know, it's a cry for help. And I feel like going back to the main theme of today's live, that this weekend was indicative of that. This weekend was just a comedy of fucking errors, except for the people who got sick. You know, the 55, 60 or some odd people that had to get medical attention, and in a few cases, very serious medical attention for heat. That part's not comical. And I don't wish that on anybody, even if you're foolish enough to go out there and crazy enough to support Trump. And even if you're a profane racist, I don't want to see people get hurt. I just don't like that. I don't want to see people get sick. So I don't like that. That part isn't funny to me. But everything else, including Mother Nature, I mean, just shutting the whole fucking thing down. And the fact that scientists, whatever ones we have left, right, in the government, the few of them that are there, they told them that this would happen. They were like, you can't do that. They made it clear what the weather in DC was going to be like, what the potentiality was going to be like. So you have this whole thing was just this comedy of ridiculous, embarrassing errors. And then everything, the way it ended with me, and this one I'm going to show you, it ended with the World Cup. Oh, shoot. Hang on. Let me just pull it. Let me just, sorry, guys. I should have had this prepped a little better. Let me find the... Okay. This was sort of, for me, this video, this post, this Trumpian post, if you're from, I don't know if you pay attention to soccer, if you're paying attention to the World Cup at all, but let me just give you the background if you're not. Basically, I don't know soccer, but this particular player, he's one of our star players on the U.S. team. He got a red card. You get a red card for a particularly egregious penalty, right? He was kicked out of the game, and with the red card, he's not allowed to play in the next game. Trump called the president of FIFA, or whoever, the guy who's in charge of the International Soccer Association, and complained about it. The president of FIFA, who was a Trump ass-kissing fool, he's the guy that gave Trump the FIFA, that he made up a peace prize because the idiot couldn't get the real Nobel Peace Prize. He was the guy that gave Trump the FIFA Peace Prize, right? This buffoon, right? So Trump called that buffoon up, and apparently there's this independent commission, and that buffoon then, I guess, pressured the independent commission to overturn this guy's penalty so that he could play in the next game. So you see the obvious problem with this, right? You're having heads of state now. The president of the United States, and of course it would be the village idiot Donald Trump, calls up the president of a sports organization because he doesn't like a call that happened, and the president of the sports organization changes the call. So then the idiot posts this video. Oh, sorry, I don't think you can hear the sound. Hang on. Hang on, guys.
Trump card!
All right, here we go. Hang on.
Red card! Trump card! How does Trump always win? Yeah, Trump! Woo!
So that was an AI-generated video, obviously, of the player holding up the guy says ref says red card. The AI player says, "Well, I have a Trump card," and He's like, I don't know how Trump always wins. And, the guy holds up, I don't know. I mean, it's so embarrassing. It's obviously egregious in terms of sportsmanship and pressure on sporting groups, sporting organizations, and it embarrasses the U.S. Embarrasses the U.S. in terms of even if the U.S. were to win the championship, it would be you're going to have this now. This will Trump ruins everything, and this will always be over their head because they'll never be considered. It will never be considered by most people in the world, including I think a lot of Americans, as fair because they'll just say the president of the United States interfered, and that's how they won. And if they don't win, it just makes us look like bigger idiots. Lacey, I wish Trump didn't interfere with FIFA's ruling. Now a U.S. team won't feel deserved if it happens. He ruins everything. I was really excited to watch the game tonight, and now not so much. Me neither. I'm not going to watch it. Anyway, guys, I have to run. I've got my daily briefing in 3 minutes. So I love you guys. 1 minute at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 day at a time, one live at a time. Tomorrow we'll be back. Well, I don't know if I'll go live tomorrow. I'm still working things out, but I'm closer to some solutions for a permanent schedule. But next live, I promise you, it's not going to be sort of random like this. I'm going to, dive in with some specific news stories. I just thought we needed kind of a catch up today, a level setting, a figuring out where the hell we stood after the absurdity of this weekend. All right, my friends, be well, everybody. Stay safe. If you're here in the Northeast, be careful of the rain and the wind and all the other shit, and I will see you soon. And we just have to go one.